Another evolution hour. I love Dear Peter's graphics. Sums up my antiquated steampunk world TAT. And everybody remember tortuganwordpress.com, a whole bunch of freebie stuff there. Everybody can download and share those to your heart's content. And that I hope theoretically you would then go on to become so enamored, delighted by the content that you would actually want to buy the books. Available on Amazon and on Kindle, blah, blah, blah. So here we are in, turns out, the final chapter, not of our full-out analysis of, there we go, of Titans, but at least we are done with bloody theropods. He had a few taxa tailing at the end of the story that we'll be getting to as well, which, interestingly enough, they don't have any sources at all, and that may have been a calculated maneuver on their part. And we'll also be dealing with the part 2 of our semi-weekly analysis of Casey Luskin and his wondrous list of 800 plus papers that supposedly prove the issues of junk DNA that I've been taking on as a little item by item. So first off, the tail end of the theropod chapter. He concludes with 3 sources. Fortunately, they're all available, so I'll be able to put them up for you to look at. 2009 paper by Whitmer on Tyrannosaur hearing, and a 2002 paper by Mears, which Sarfati and Tay somehow thought came out in 2003. On whether or not Tyrannosaur bites were powerful enough to be able to munch on Triceratops. Spoiler alert, yes. And then the 2019 paper by Snively on their ability to turn. They're not misrepresenting the sources because they're simply reporting their content, but it's relevant to mention that not one of them is done by a creationist. So this is part of the regular scientific work that the creationists in this book are functionally parasitizing without actually supplying material on their own. Which brings us to the Utahraptor and Velociraptor. Velociraptor pops up as a name, of course, as even this book took note of in Jurassic Park, which was actually a misnomer because Velociraptor is a much smaller critter. And the form they were showing in the old Jurassic Park movies was actually Deinonychus, which is a much larger animal. And then Utahraptor is even bigger yet, getting into the much larger, super duper sized Deinonychids. No sources, however. They simply peg that they ate critters, what supposed kind they are. They're the Dromaeosaurids, Dromaeosaurid family, and the general location, like the fact that the Velociraptor propter comes from like Mongolia. And of course, Utahraptor, would be coming from Utah. Oh, hello! Rare occasion that allows your attendance. Hi, Jin. The funky part, of course, is it really intrigued me that they didn't want to draw attention to any technical literature on the subject. Maybe they were just getting lazy at this point at the tail end of the chapter. Who can say? However, I was piqued, and I was going to put in a paper that would refer to the early paleontology on the who found Utahraptor and some stuff on the Velociraptor. And then it got more interesting because the place where Utahraptor was found is the Cedar Mountain deposit, which is a Cretaceous deposit in Utah. And it doesn't look even remotely like a big slosh flood deposit. Arid environment, occasional fires are preserved in the information that they have in that fossil records. I'll be putting up a paper from 2020 by Jekyll et al. On the paleoclimatology of the deposit, and you can read through and find all the gruesome little details yourself. And then, of course, Velociraptor, Mongolia, infamously, is not from an alluvial deposit. It's from a desert, sand dunes, buried in sand, Aeolian deposits, as they would say in the little biz. And so I'll be putting a 2008 paper by Dingus et al. On the geological context of that. And then another little item that comes up with Velociraptor is a 2007 paper from Turner on the quill knobs that are found on an example of one of them, feathers, which brings up a little addendum that Sarfati and Tay stuck at the tail end of their chapter. Last minute edition, as we were coming to print, blah, blah, blah. They were having a conniption fit over the Jurassic World Dominion movie, in which they were showing feathered dinosaurs in it, particularly a feathered therizinosaur. And so after that, one of the paragraphs that I found in this note was particularly interesting, and I'll be putting in the description as well, and I'll read it off here for you. It had a large variety of dinosaurs: Allosaurus, Ankylosaurus, Apatosaurus, Atrociraptor, Baryonyx, Brachiosaurus, Carnotaurus, Compsognathus, Dilophosaurus, Dimetrodon, Dimorphodon, Dreadnoughtus, Gallimimus, giant locust, unidentified species, Giganotosaurus, Iguanodon, Lystrosaurus, Microceratus, Moros, Mosasaurus, Nasutoceratops, Oviraptor, Parasaurolophus, Pteranodon, Pyroraptor, Quetzalcoatlus, Sinoceratops, Stegosaurus, Stygimoloch, therizinosaurus, Triceratops, Tyrannosaurus rex, and Velociraptor. I don't want to sound picky, but not all of them are dinosaurs. In fact, out of the 33 critters that they listed off, 6 of them, 18%, definitely aren't dinosaurs. Starting with Dimetrodon, which is a synapsid, and it isn't from the Cretaceous, it's from the Permian, and it's on our evolutionary line of descent. You know, it's a little finback critter that's often included in dinosaur sets. Dimorphodon, which is a small pterosaur. Giant locusts, the last time I heard, do not qualify as dinosaurs. And then Lystrosaurus, which is another one of those Permian or early Triassic therapsids. And then Mosasaurus is a marine reptile, also not a dinosaur. Was this just kind of a slip of the tongue on their part, to where they were kind of slipping that in, and they, instead of just saying a large variety of animals in the thing, they just put in dinosaurs because most of them were dinosaurs? Hard to say, but whatever it is, I couldn't resist pointing it out. Now then, we get to our happy dappy bit. Oh, and let me also take this as an intermission. Oh, yes, to put up our list of patrons, without whom this would be much tougher to get by than it is. Share screen. Thank you very much, everybody who has helped the project and continues to help the project with all the ups and downs of life. Needless to say, it'd be nice if we have more patrons. The more patrons I have, the easier it is to get by each month, and the easier it is to access the stuff that I need and keep in printer ink and all the other stuff that operates through the year, and you know, fuel oil and all the physical expenses. I'm not nearly at the elaborate level of what you get with the videos that are monetized, but then again, they also have bloody commercials. And we're not getting that here, and I hope never have to worry about that aspect. Part 2 then relates to the KC Luskin list. Now, what I'm doing on that is their contention is that most of the air quotes junk DNA is actually functional. And they tend to riff off the ENCODE project, which bandied around an 80% level, which was based upon the kinds of biologic activity that they were getting. And since then, in the years since their 2012 paper, a lot have been walking back to where, yeah, they're not actually saying that this has direct biological function. Dan Stern Cardinale and others who have done posts on this are not at all distressed at the prospect that some of the junk DNA, as yet unidentified as to function, will turn out to have some function overall. But we're talking maybe overall 20, 25%-ish, that kind of a range. Not the 50% level or more, or way higher level, nearly all, depending upon the creationist you ask. Luskin, it took like pulling teeth for Dan Stern Cardinale to get Luskin to draw that little line in the sand of 50%, and concede, though, that as of the moment, the scientific evidence doesn't support that 50%. So The benchmark that I'm going on is A, is it showing the functionality of a particular system? And what is the nature of that? Is it a thing that has mutated and causes something to happen, which might be good or bad? And are they suggesting that this is an implication that that whole big category of, say, retrotransposons or whatever are in fact functional? If the paper isn't going that step, if the paper is just talking a specific subset of things, then that's perfectly consistent with Dan's position and not consistent with the intelligent design position. There's also the theodicy matter, because if what we're talking about functionality is a mutation taking place that, say, turns on a retrotransposon and glitches things up and causes problems, that's a theodicy issue. Because in order to grab it in to say, ooh, it's functional in the way that it does bad things. So is this intended to do a bad thing by the designer? Or will they cascade off to argue that, well, there's always sin from Adam that's perhaps the cause of all of this? They may argue that, but Luskin and company haven't gotten to that stage. They're just wanting to waive all of these papers. So stage by stage, we're going to be going through these things. So what do we got? There's a 2024 paper right off the bat, which is this year, available so far only as an abstract, and I'll be putting a link up to that, which I don't typically like to do because I want you to read the whole paper. Fortunately, there is a draft text of the paper available. Now, with the caveat that the finished product may be slightly different, although probably won't be much different, I'll be putting a link up to that. And you can read that for yourself. And my view is that paper is not supporting the contention. So it's not going in the, this actually supports the Luskin argument point. The paper is actually about the role ALUs are playing in triggering pathology. That's one of the reasons why I've been keeping really big take on ALUs for years. When I first found out about them, really in the 1990s, when I was first encountering them, at that time, it was thought there was maybe about 400,000 of them in our genome. And now we're up to about 1.4 million. So roughly 10% of our genome is just ALUs. Now, the vast majority of them don't do a damn thing. They can't even be read because they don't have a README signal. So the cell just bypasses them. But once in a while, it can mutate into a README thing and get incorporated into proteins or wherever it happens to be in the genome, which typically is not a good idea. So this paper was addressing how specific combinations of ALUs had an impact. Quote, when two ALUs with opposite orientations are present in the vicinity, their high sequence similarities allow them to form an intermolecular hairpin structure, which are a major class of endogenous double-stranded RNAs that can activate innate immune response systems. And they, in turn, cited 3 papers, only one of which I think was on the doodad list. Let me look down here a minute. Let me see. Maybe even though those 3 papers weren't. Yeah. Okay. The first one is Kim from 2014. I'll be putting a link up to that. It was going into how the signaling response was triggered by the ALU pairs. This paper also, that was the one that was also on the Luskin 800 list. So they're trying to offer this to show that functionality aspect. Nope, it's not helping either. On the issue of the ALU conformation formations, Kim 2014 further cited 2 papers, neither one of which showed up on the Luskin list, even though they're explicitly about ALUs. Athanasius in 2004, and although I have indications that it had been cited by some anti-evolutionists under different conditions elsewhere, but not on this list. And then a paper from 2004 by Blow et al., which were about how ALUs get edited out of the genome, which has to occur a lot because there's so many of them. So it was about a mechanism that deals with ALUs, not functionality for ALUs. I can see why they wouldn't want to bring that up as an indication of supportive of the functionality of ALUs. Now, the remaining papers that Kuhn did on this aspect were two others that did not show up on the Luskin list. A paper from Kim et al. From 2018 and one from Ahmad et al. 2018, which all cover kind of similar turf. The latter paper being on, quote, the autoinflammatory disorder, unquote, AGS, that, quote, results from loss of tolerance to endogenous ALU retroelement transcripts, unquote, and that non-linked ALUs aren't triggering this. And not all MDAs recognize the linked ones, noting that, quote, the increased efficiency of MDA5 in recognizing a double-string RNA comes at a cost of self-recognition and implicates a unique role of ALU double-stranded RNAs as virus-like elements that shape the primate immune system. So what you got going here is that there's no direct mechanism to observe some of these little ALUs. Some of them can be caught, others can't. They can cause diseases. In other words, it's a compensatory mechanism. Is this helping the intelligent design case at all? No. And at no point are they discussing anything that implies that 50% level. So it fails on that front and also is failing on the theodicy angle because it's talking about the role that diseases come in this area. Now, I'm anticipating there's going to be a hell of a lot more that's going to be falling into this same category. And it may turn out, we'll see, that none of the papers on their master list are actually going to meet that threshold requirement, but that a chunk of them are popping up on that theodicy column. We'll see. It's going to be a funky little thing to go. Anyway, that'll put you up on some reading list on that subject matter. Our next chapter in Sarfati and Tay is going to relate to the sauropods, our wonderful little sauropods, which of course spread across quite a range. What I could see right off the bat is that they're generally thinking about the great big famous later Jurassic and Cretaceous sauropods. But there's a whole bunch, Cetiosaurids and others that predate them, much smaller groups, Plateosaurus and all that bunch. So I'm going to be seeing just exactly how many of those pop up on the list as to how selective they are on it, and how they are dealing with taxonomical ambiguity in there. And there's only about a page of footnotes that I could see that's going to be covering on that. And I haven't scanned through it yet to see how much of it's technical literature and how much of it isn't. We'll find out because we're going to be counting every single one of that. So that's going to be the next operation. 2 weeks from now, then we'll have another installment on our Casey Luskin list where we'll plow through a few more little papers and we will be seeing all the little funky dunk that's going on there. It's been fun because I've been having a double whammy over the last week of continuing to work through the source analysis for Jackson Wheat's chapter, where I've been knee-deep in his discussion of Stephen Meyer's oddball views, and Gunter Beckley, for that matter, of Precambrian and Cambrian critters and the base of intelligent design systematics and all that kind of stuff. And it turns out there's been an awful lot of recent material that even Jackson didn't have in his analysis, so I'm plugging all of that stuff in. Plus newer material that's popping in, some new Genesis Park stuff that I just uncovered relating to the soft tissue stuff that they had only posted fairly recently that I didn't have on my older operation, and I only stumbled on that because I was searching around for another little prototype element. And one of the things that's kind of been keeping me on hold in finishing off my section on the soft tissue issue, particularly in relation to Mark Armitage, is the ongoing research as to what the hell's going on with his taxa that he found, in particular the Triceratops horns. And I've been understanding from Dapper Dino that he should be having a video out, probably in June, from what I gather, where that little diligent bastard was tracking down on Google Maps to try to find out, based on the sparse information that's present in Armitage's paper, but photographs and things of the stuff, to isolate where the hell this deposit was. Because there's not precise information, which is a dead giveaway that something fishy is going on, and it's sloppy research. But anyway, that it's sounding like Dapper has located this deposit, and it is a Quaternary era deposit. It's not Cretaceous, and therefore it ain't no Triceratops. And indeed, these bison latifrondexes that are these giant super horned bisons that were known, are in fact known from that deposit. So one from like 7 miles away in another area, but still in the same horizon in terms of the depositional range. So there's every reason to wonder about that. And that's also raising the issue of the Dimetrodon and other things that Armitage has claimed to do analysis on. Are they in fact from what he thinks they are, even as well? Because if a lot of these things aren't in fact as old as he wants them to be, some of the things that he's coming up with are way less amazing than if they are from like a Permian synapsid. How does he determine what is a bone in this area? So there's going to be some additional material, so I want to wait on that stuff. There was also some new material that I uncovered via some of our network that I hadn't realized was out. Some new papers by Phil Center on the soft tissue stuff that he's been doing, that I had been aware of some earlier material that he'd done, but he's done some more stuff directly addressing a lot of the stuff that Armitage is going on. So I've been wanting to coordinate all of that material. And so we want to leave all of that parfait when the thing is all finished. So we want it to be as up-to-date as possible. As with the other book, we'd be plugging material in up to the very last minute before we make a published version of it to make sure that it's as up-to-date as possible. And because so many of the little science fields are absolutely delicious as to new stuff that comes along and analyses of things and new scientific discoveries on so many different areas, it's going to be funky. So we want to have it as a really huge, useful compendium of stuff that can work as a very reliable and current reference base. In addition to retaining the chronology appendix and the listing of phyla that was in the previous book, there will be a bunch of new appendices. We won't be including the one on codon assignments. That's only in volume 1. But we'll be having material on the Ark Encounter list and a listing of the various flood legends of the world and how creationists misrepresent those. Material on the theodicy angle of diseases and predation in the fossil record, and how creationists have evolved their position on when exactly carnivory entered the world. They're all agreed that it was after sin, but they've pretty much given up on the after the flood argument, which was the format that was very common in the Duane Gish, Henry Morris era in the 1980s and 90s. That's gone by the wayside. Too many creationists have become way too aware of the paleontology there, and that line in the sand has had to be swept out, and new line in the sand later on. And then there's also discussions of the demographics and genetic information as to the spread of people around the world, and particularly in the Americas, things on the archaeology and the genetics that just don't make sense at all from a creationist point of view, and how little of that ever gets bumped into. About the closest some of them get is kind of end running it. Nathaniel Jensen's kind of sidles around the periphery of some of this stuff, although it inevitably leads to some absolutely hilarious confusions as to when alleles are popping up in the genome, that according to Jensen's young Earth creationist position, he's got some of this stuff taking place in like the Christian era, when we've got examples of them indisputably in Neolithic sites, which makes perfect sense from a standard evolutionary chronology framework and doesn't make damn sense at all from the cartoon version that Jensen comes up with. So anyway, that gives you some up-to-dates on all of that stuff that's going to be in the material. The Ark Encounter kind list will be a really, I think, very useful compendium for any scholar in the field, simply because the Ark Encounter people have not exactly gone out of their way to ever make available what the hell's on their damn list. But between the information that I was being able to get from various photographs, including and the big spreadsheet that Gutsick Gibbon went through, I've been able to compile what I think is a definitive listing of those. And now we can start playing around with what order they're in, and why are they in the order they're in, and are they mushing stuff up, and are they basically following evolutionary sheets for all of it, which, spoiler alert, that's what they're doing. So they don't even have a creationist model to be able to do, and they've not gone out of their way to want to document how they've arrived at the forms they have. So it's going to be a funky little thing. And it'll be a really nice breakdown analysis that anybody that comes into this matter that wants to look into this stuff won't actually have to go to the damned Ark Encounter and take a detailed photograph. They'll be able to draw off all the material that we'll have in our appendix and see exactly what's on there. And they'll be in alphabetical order so you can find things easily and all that kind of stuff. So I think that'll be a useful addition to things. So I think it's going to be at least as big a book as Volume 1. Anyway, let me put my advert for our rocks book up. Oops. Find that over there, that over there. Remember, I'm an old person trying to work around my stupid little mouse. At least I have a mouse to be able to operate with rather than do that stupid little touch screen. And enjoy. Jackson and I are very proud of the book, and it's been a hell of a lot of fun writing it. And I know I've learned an enormous amount in the process of writing Volume 1 and an enormous amount in the process of writing Volume 2. So functionally, we're operating as a moving target where the RJ that did Evolution Slam Dunk in 2016 didn't know nearly as much about the topic as the RJ of 2020 in The Rocks Were There Volume 1, and that RJ didn't know nearly as much as the RJ of 2024 knows. So the idea to be up on the science end of things and also up on the creationist apologetics to observe their evolutionary treatment over time as they've adapted themselves to data, or simply ignore blocks of data, or get into hissy fits over particular areas. We'll be alluding to the little minor fracas about when the boundary of the flood was. That's a little bit of a mini schism because there's a bunch at ICR that are digging their heels in on the Cenozoic era rather than the Cretaceous flood boundary model. That's the more usable one typically in creationism. And then, of course, there's Randy Gugliuzza at ICR, who has actually driven some creationists out of their camp because of his just obsessive dislike for natural selection as a concept. So all of that stuff is going to be alluded to, as well as if just when you think certain branches of creationism have hit the bottom of the barrel for dumb, along comes somebody else that shows, no, we are digging it even lower. And all of that stuff will be in Volume 2. So anyway, everybody that's watching the show after not live, give us a like and put in comments or questions as you will. And we will be seeing you all next week. Everybody stay safe. There's tornadoes and crap in so many different places, let alone the people that I know that are in like war zones that they got to watch out about. So watch out, and also be on guard for the wooden penguins, because we know they're ready for you. Don't turn your back on them. So we will be seeing you all next week, and I will be ending the stream. Au revoir.